Postman realizes there is a lot wrong with the way society operates today. His approach to finding solutions to these problems is to look at our past. He decides that the 18th century is the best time period to compare today with, as the people of that time dealt with similar issues that arose with the Enlightenment. They dealt with the advancement of technology, the idea of childhood, and problem solving, which is related to today's education system. My synthesis of Postman's work will dive into these three themes. Let's begin with technology. Technology is great, right?
Correct!
Well, Postman doesn't seem to completely agree. He does regard it as stupid to be anti-technology, but he doesn't find technology to be a necessity. Technology does solve a lot of day-to-day problems, but these may be problems that not everyone faces, or problems that don't necessarily need to be solved. Postman poses a very good question. What new problems might be created because we have solved this problem? He uses the example of cars. They help us to get where we need to be quickly, but cause congestion in cities and increase the risk of pedestrian casualties. Our innovation has a lot of consequences that we aren't aware of or ignore for the sake of creating something technologically advanced. Postman says the idea that if something could be done, it should be done was born in the 19th century. This was an idea that was not present in the 18th century. In the age of the Enlightenment, they created for human progress, not just because they could. This is a huge difference between the 18th century and today. In order to understand how the problem of technology affects people, we need to understand the people it affects, in particular, children. Today, when we hear the word children, we think, oh yeah, little kids. But for part of the 17th century, people would respond with confusion, as the idea of childhood hadn't been discovered yet. It wasn't until the 18th century that people began to view children as we do, as developing people who don't have the same intellect or understanding as adults do. This idea created a whole new subsection of people who were required to be treated differently than adults. It was realized that this stage of development is incredibly important for the future of children. An intellectual of the 18th century, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, stated that childhood requires only that it not be suffocated by civilization's diseased outpourings. With so much exposure to technology and media, children are so heavily influenced by how they see society acting. Society's behavior becomes what the children exposed to it strive for. One example we spoke of in class was the idea of self-image. With children exposed to celebrities who always looked perfect, or people posting only good things in their lives on social media, it's easy for children to think that they or their lives are boring and or not good enough. So, they emulate what they see and try to be something that they're not, whether it be in regards to money, social status, or beauty. This exposure causes children to lie to themselves and not think for themselves. The constant exposure to technology and media also raises another problem. Postman makes a great point about this topic. What does a 40-year-old have to teach a 12-year-old if both of them have been seeing the same TV programs, the same movies, the same advertisements, the same news shows, listening to the same CDs, and calling forth the same information on the internet? It appears that the gap between children and adults is vanishing in this regards. It is as if we are moving back to the 17th century way of thought where childhood was not present. We've seen how technology has affected the children of the present, but one point that hasn't been addressed is how this all relates to education. It is pretty clear that the education system has changed a lot since the 18th century, but how? Postman says that one of the legacies of the 18th century was the idea that a proper education must have as one of its goals the cultivation of a skeptical outlook based on reason. If you look at any classroom today, you'll quickly realize that this idea has been thrown out the window. Students are taught to repeat what teachers show them on exams in order to get a good test score. If you find a different way to solve a problem that wasn't explained in class, you're automatically wrong. The education system is teaching students to basically be robots that repeat information rather than retain it. Students are rarely taught how to problem solve nowadays. This is a deeper problem than what we see on the surface, since technology also plays a factor in this. With easy and fast access to information, children are being trained to want everything immediately. They want everything now. This spills into their education as well. Not only are schools training them to have the right answer, but this desire for instant gratification causes students to not care about problem solving to get an answer. So with this lack of problem-solving skills, the children may grow up to act like this. Yeah, let's hope not. To conclude, Postman shows us how the combination of a rapid advancement in technology and a failing school system is creating a generation of people who are trained to forget about being unique and to live up to the standards of society and fit in with everyone else by any means. They're being trained to rely on something that gives them answers rather than using problem-solving skills to figure out their problems themselves. To be blunt, technology and society has inhibited them from fulfilling their true potential, living a life of mediocrity. It shouldn't be this way, though. Maybe we should take Postman's advice and adopt the practices of the 18th century in order to get out of this rut.